Some legal cases are just about one specific dispute between two people, but every once in a while, a case comes along that becomes the bedrock, the very foundation for how we understand a law for years, even decades. Today, we're diving into one of those foundational cases, the 2007 Supreme Court judgment in Mayadevi versus Jagdish Prasad. This is a case that completely redefined what cruelty really means in Indian marriage law.
So, to really get what's going on with the law here, you first have to understand the human story at the center of it all. The couple, they got married back in 1993, and eventually things got so bad that the husband, Jagdish Prasad, had to file for divorce. And he laid out this pattern of behavior that he argued made it absolutely impossible to continue the marriage.
And the allegations presented to the court, wow, they were incredibly severe. This wasn't just about a single fight. It was a systematic, ongoing pattern. We're talking about repeated, completely baseless allegations of impotence. The deliberate withholding of food, not just from the husband, but from their children. There was even physical torture of the kids. And on top of all that, there was this constant cloud of fear, with threats of filing false dowry and cruelty cases, basically a form of legal blackmail, and just persistent mistreatment of his parents.
So, this really shocking set of facts forced the courts to answer a fundamental question. We all have a general idea of what cruelty is, right? But what does it mean in the eyes of the law? Especially when the stakes are as high as granting a divorce.
And this is where it gets really fascinating from a legal standpoint. The main law here, the Hindu Marriage Act, it doesn't actually give you a neat definition of cruelty. And that's not a mistake. They did it on purpose. The law itself recognizes that what one person considers cruel is so dependent on everything, their culture, their social standing, their specific life situation, that a one-size-fits-all definition just wouldn't work. This means judges have to figure it out every single time based on the unique facts in front of them.
Okay, but that brings up a huge problem, doesn't it? This kind of cruelty, it almost always happens behind closed doors. You're not going to have a lineup of independent witnesses. So how on earth can a court figure out what really happened? Well, it all comes down to the legal standard of proof.
And this chart illustrates the difference perfectly. See, in a criminal case, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The scales of justice have to be weighed down heavily on one side. But a divorce, that's a civil case. The standard is much different. It's called a preponderance of probabilities. All that means is the court just has to believe that the claims are more likely to be true than not true. The scales only need to tip, even just slightly. And let me tell you, that difference is absolutely crucial for getting justice in these kinds of cases.
So, with that legal framework in mind, how did the Supreme Court of India actually look at the awful facts of the Mayadevi case? Let's break down how they applied the law. The court made a statement here that was so powerful, and it still echoes today. It said that cruelty isn't just about black eyes and broken bones. The court recognized that mental cruelty, well, it can be way more devastating. It's the kind of pain that doesn't leave visible scars, but it causes this deep, profound suffering that can absolutely destroy a person and make a marriage unbearable.
So the court's decision really hinged on three key ideas. First, they said that making false allegations of impotence, which attack someone's dignity, that right there is mental cruelty. Second, threatening to file false criminal cases isn't just talk, it's a weapon. It's a form of coercion and blackmail. And third, and this is so important, the court looked at the cumulative effect. It wasn't about one single incident. It was the total weight of all these actions together that painted a clear, undeniable picture of cruelty.
Now, it's important to know the court didn't just pull this out of thin air. Its landmark decision in 2007 was actually built on an even older legal foundation, a case that had set the stage for all of this more than 30 years earlier.
You can literally see the legal lineage on this timeline. Way back in 1975, a case called Doctrine versus Doctrine first laid out the ground rules for what cruelty is and how you prove it in court. Fast forward 32 years, and the Mayadevi case basically picked up that legal torch, reaffirmed those exact same principles, and cemented them for the modern world.
And this is the exact checklist they used, the Doctrine 5-prong test. To grant a divorce for cruelty, a court has to be able to say yes to all 5 of these. First off, is there actual proof? Second, does the person asking for the divorce genuinely fear for their safety? Third, is that fear reasonable for someone in their shoes? Fourth, did they do anything to provoke this behavior? And finally, number 5, and this is crucial, have they already forgiven or condoned these acts of cruelty in the past? In Jagdish Prasad's case, the Supreme Court looked at the evidence and said, yep, all 5 conditions were clearly met.
Okay, so the case is from 2007. Why are we still talking about it today? What is its lasting legal legacy? While the impact is just huge, this one number tells you everything you need to know. The rules laid down in Mayadevi have been cited as the binding authority in hundreds and hundreds of other court cases all across India. It has become the absolute go-to precedent for any case that involves mental cruelty. So, what's the big takeaway for you? The Mayadevi case is still so important for a few big reasons. It gave courts a clear playbook for something that's really hard to pin down: mental cruelty. It was one of the first major cases to say loud and clear that threatening to misuse the law is, by itself, a form of cruelty. It also powerfully confirmed that these protections aren't just for one gender. They apply equally to husbands and wives. And what's really amazing is that today, these same principles are being used to tackle totally new problems, like digital harassment and online defamation.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The court, back in 2007, they couldn't have possibly foreseen all the ways technology would change our relationships. The principles from Mayadevi give us a strong foundation, but the law always has to keep up. So the real question for the future is, how do we keep applying these timeless ideas about mental harm to a world that's constantly inventing new and evolving ways to inflict it?